I signed the divorce papers under the Christmas lights, but I did not sign away the truth. The pen felt colder than it should have, heavier too, like it had been pulled from the bottom of a frozen lake instead of my own desk drawer. Across the dining room table, Emily watched me with that calm, polished smile she wore when she believed she had already won. 12 years of marriage sat between us in the glow of the tree, wrapped in gold ribbon, buried under the smell of cinnamon candles and roasted turkey, pretending to be something holy. My name is Nathan Whitaker. I am 42 years old, a construction project manager from Columbus, Ohio, the kind of man who checks the furnace before a snowstorm, pays the mortgage before buying himself anything, and believes a house should be held together by more than nails and paint. That night, our house looked perfect from the outside. Fresh snow on the lawn, white lights along the roofline, a wreath on the red front door. Inside, Bing Crosby played low from the kitchen speaker. My son Caleb was teaching his little sister Lily how to stack marshmallows and hot cocoa, and my in-laws sat stiffly near the fireplace, pretending they had not come to witness an execution. Emily placed the envelope beside my plate right after Grace. Not before, not privately, right there between the mashed potatoes and the cranberry sauce, while our children were laughing 10 feet away in matching Christmas pajamas. She tapped the papers once with her red fingernail and said, "Let's not make this harder than it has to be." The room did not go silent all at once. It happened in pieces. Her mother stopped moving her fork. Her father cleared his throat, then looked down. Ryan Caldwell, Emily's old friend from college, leaned back in his chair with a careful expression that was supposed to look sympathetic. It did not. It looked rehearsed. I stared at the envelope, then at my wife. She had curled her hair the way she used to when we were newly married, soft blonde waves over one shoulder, pearl earrings catching the light. Beautiful, untouchable. A woman playing the final scene of a movie she had written for herself. On Christmas, I asked. My voice came out quiet, steadier than I felt. Emily's smile thinned. The kids deserve clarity. So do I. Clarity. That was the word she chose. Not mercy. Not honesty. Clarity. Caleb wandered closer, holding a mug too big for his hands. Dad? What's going on? I looked at him, at the brown eyes I had loved since the day the nurse placed him in my arms. Lily stood behind him, her small fingers hooked around the sleeve of his pajama shirt. Emily did not look at them. She looked at the pen. "Sign it, Nathan," she said softly. "You have dragged this out long enough." Something in my chest tightened, not anger exactly, not yet. More like a door locking from the inside. I picked up the pen. Emily exhaled as if she had been waiting years for that sound. I signed my name once, then again, each letter clean and deliberate. No shouting, no begging, no scene for the children to remember. When I finished, I slid the papers back across the table. Emily reached for them too quickly. That was her mistake, because I placed my hand on the second envelope before she noticed it. Plain white. No ribbon. No holiday seal. Just a legal label and a truth she thought would stay buried until after New Year's. Ryan saw it first. His face changed so fast it almost made me smile. Emily's fingers froze over the divorce papers. "What is that?" she asked. I looked around the table, at the candles, the untouched dinner, the Christmas lights blinking red and gold against the window glass. Then I said the words that turned the room colder than the snow outside. "Now read the other envelope." The second envelope sat on the table like it had its own gravity. Nobody touched it. Nobody even seemed willing to breathe near it. A minute earlier, the dining room had looked like a Christmas card from a neighborhood where people hid their problems behind fresh paint and good manners. Now every ornament on the tree felt like a witness. The angel on top leaned slightly to the left, the way it always did because Caleb had bumped the tree stand when he was 7 and I never had the heart to replace it. The fireplace hummed. The candles flickered. The turkey cooled in the center of the table, steam thinning into nothing. Emily's mother, Margaret, pressed a napkin to her mouth, not because she was crying, but because she was afraid of what might come out if she spoke. Her husband, Donald, stared at his wine glass like the answer was floating somewhere in the red. Ryan Caldwell sat at the far end, one hand wrapped around his water glass, his knuckles pale against the crystal. He had arrived 30 minutes earlier wearing a navy coat, polished boots, and the easy smile of a man who thought he belonged in rooms other men paid for. Emily had called him an old family friend. That was the phrase she used. Old family friend. like words could scrub fingerprints off a secret. He brought a bottle of expensive Pinot Noir and a wrapped gift for the kids. Caleb thanked him politely. Lily hid behind my leg the way she did around people who smiled too much. I noticed that. Fathers notice small things. We notice loose stair rails, low tire pressure, coughs that sound different than yesterday. We notice when a man looks at our wife for half a second too long and then looks away too carefully. Emily had spent the entire afternoon polishing the image of our home. She hung fresh garland over the staircase, baked sugar cookies she would not eat, and moved through the kitchen in a cream sweater that made her look softer than she had been in years. From the outside, she was grace itself. Inside, she was timing every word. I could feel it in the way she kept checking the wall clock. 6:45, 6:52, 7 o'clock. Not nervous. Scheduled. The children were in the living room when she finally placed the divorce papers beside my plate. She wanted witnesses, but not the kind who could understand every sentence. She wanted pressure. She wanted me cornered by holiday music, family expectation, and two small faces I would rather protect than defend myself in front of. That was the kind of move Emily made. Clean on the surface, sharp underneath. Nathan, she said now, her voice lower, do not do this in front of the children. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the sentence had the nerve to walk into the room wearing innocence. You started this in front of the children, I said. Caleb stood motionless near the hallway, holding his cocoa mug with both hands. Lily leaned against him, her eyes moving from me to her mother to the envelope. 8 years old, and already she understood the weather in a room before the adults named the storm. Dad, Caleb said again, smaller this time. That word hit me harder than anything Emily had said. Dad. For letters. 12 years of scraped knees, school lunches, backyard baseball, and midnight fevers. For letters that could build a man and break him in the same breath. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood. The legs made a soft scrape against the hardwood. Everyone flinched except Emily. She was still trying to calculate. She always did that when control slipped. Her eyes sharpened first, then narrowed, then softened just enough to look wounded if someone was watching. There is nothing in that envelope that matters tonight, she said. Ryan swallowed. I heard it. A small sound, almost nothing. But in a quiet room, almost nothing becomes evidence. I looked at him, and for the first time all evening, he could not hold my eyes. Emily noticed. Her face changed. Not much. Just enough. The fire cracked behind me. Outside, snow tapped gently against the windows, clean and patient, covering the street inch by inch. Inside, everything old was rising to the surface. The late meetings. The deleted messages. The way Emily started locking her phone after 14 years of leaving it on kitchen counters. The way Ryan appeared at school fundraisers, charity dinners, birthday parties, always with a reason, always with a smile, always standing close enough to be seen but far enough to be denied. I placed 2 fingers on the white envelope and slid it toward the center of the table. If this family is going to have clarity, I said, using her word because some words deserve to be returned to their owner, then let us have all of it. Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. Margaret whispered her daughter's name like a warning. Donald finally looked up. Ryan stared at the envelope as if it had begun ticking. And in that frozen little circle of Christmas light and candle smoke, I understood something I should have understood years earlier. The truth does not need to shout. It only needs a quiet room. Emily reached for the envelope, then stopped herself halfway. That small hesitation told the room more than any confession could have. Her hand hovered over the white paper, fingers perfectly manicured, wedding ring catching the Christmas lights like it still meant something. For years, I had watched those hands build a life in public and hide a different one in private. They arranged school photo frames on the mantle. They signed birthday cards from both of us. They touched my shoulder at church when people were watching. They also turned her phone face down every time a message came in after 10 o'clock. I had ignored too much because peace is addictive when you are tired. A man can call it patience. He can call it trust. Sometimes it is just fear wearing a decent suit. Nathan, Emily said, careful now. You are upset. I understand that. There it was. The soft voice. The polished mercy. The version of her that could make other people believe I was unreasonable before I even raised my tone. I looked at the children. Caleb's cocoa had gone untouched, the marshmallows melting into a white film on top. Lily's lower lip trembled, but she did not cry. She was waiting for the adults to tell her what kind of world she had just woken up in. I hated that. More than the papers. More than Ryan. More than the lies sitting between us and that envelope. Kids, I said gently. Go sit on the couch for a minute. Caleb did not move. Are you leaving? He asked. Emily answered too fast. Your father and I are just having an adult conversation. Your father. The words came easily when they served her. They only became complicated when truth walked into the room. I knelt so my eyes were level with his. 12 years old, trying to stand like a man while his hands still looked like a boy's. I am right here, I told him. Whatever happens tonight, I am right here. He nodded, but the nod was not belief. It was survival. He took Lily's hand and guided her toward the living room, though both of them stayed close enough to hear the shape of things. Once they were out of the dining room, Emily's mask slipped just enough for the real woman underneath to look out. You had no right, she whispered. No right to what? I asked. To open a door you locked? Ryan shifted in his chair. Donald set his wine glass down too hard, and the sound cracked through the room. Margaret turned to Emily with a mother's panic, the kind that already knew there was something to panic about. What is in the envelope? She asked. Emily did not answer. She looked at Ryan. Not long. Not openly. But long enough. That look carried history. I felt it land. It was not a glance between friends. It was a wire stretched between two people standing on the same secret. I had seen it before and explained it away. At the Labor Day cookout when Ryan knew where Emily kept the serving trays. At Lily's school recital when he brought her the exact coffee she liked without asking. At Caleb's baseball game when he called him champ with a comfort I told myself was harmless. Little things. Nickel-sized facts. Too small to accuse. Too many to ignore. This is ridiculous, Ryan said finally, forcing a laugh that died before it reached the table. Maybe everyone should cool down. I turned toward him. You have been cooling down for years. His face went blank. Emily inhaled sharply. There. The first crack. I did not need to press hard. Truth has weight. Put it on the table, and people start moving around it. I picked up the envelope, but did not open it yet. Not because I wanted drama. Because once paper speaks, nothing returns to the way it was. I thought about every Christmas morning I had spent on that living room floor, cutting twist ties off toy boxes with a pocket knife, building plastic castles, assembling bikes in the garage while my coffee went cold. I thought about Caleb falling asleep against my shoulder after his first fever, Lily's tiny hand gripping my finger in the hospital, Emily smiling beside me in photographs that now felt like evidence planted at a scene. Love does not become fake just because someone lied near it. That was the cruel part. My love had been real. My years had been real. The bedtime stories, the lunch notes, the science fair volcano that stained the kitchen. Counter read for 2 weeks. Real. All of it. And still, something underneath it had been false from the beginning. Emily's voice shook when she spoke again. Please, do not open that. Not angry now. Not polished. Afraid. The room heard it. Ryan heard it. I heard the old life exhale its last breath. I slid my thumb under the flap and said, You should have asked me for mercy before you asked me for a signature. I opened the envelope only halfway before Emily said my name again, and this time it did not sound like a wife correcting a husband. It sounded like someone trying to hold a door shut after the lock had already broken. I paused with my thumb under the flap and looked at her. For a second, the house seemed to shrink around us. The dining room, the tree, the garland, the framed family photos along the hallway, all of it pulled tight like a rope. This does not have to happen tonight, she whispered. I almost believed she was pleading for the children. Almost. But her eyes were not on Caleb and Lily in the living room. Her eyes were on Ryan. That was when the last piece clicked into place with a quiet, ugly precision. 3 weeks earlier, I had come home early from a job site in Dayton because freezing rain had shut down the concrete pour. My boots were still wet when I stepped into the kitchen. Emily's laptop sat open on the island. The screen dimmed, but not locked. I was not looking for anything. That is how the truth finds you sometimes. Not through suspicion. Through bad weather and an unlocked screen. A notification blinked in the corner from a lab portal with the words appointment confirmation. I knew enough not to touch it at first. I made coffee I did not want. I stood there in my own kitchen listening to the refrigerator hum, telling myself there were a dozen innocent explanations. Then another notification appeared. Search history synced from her phone. How to stop court-ordered paternity test. My hand went cold around the mug. Not shaky. Cold. There is a difference. Shaking means the storm is outside you. Cold means it has moved in. I took photos of the screen with my phone, then backed away like the laptop was a sleeping animal. That night, while Emily folded laundry upstairs and hummed along to a Christmas playlist, I sat in my truck in the driveway and called an attorney named Grace Hollander. Her office was 15 miles away, above a bank. Nothing fancy, just a brass plaque and a receptionist who sounded like she had heard every version of heartbreak twice. Grace listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Do not confront her yet. Document everything. Speak less than you want to. Save more than you think you need." So I did. I became quiet with purpose. I checked old calendars. I downloaded bank statements. I found hotel charges from years earlier that Emily had marked as conference expenses. I found photographs from a charity dinner where Ryan stood too close behind her, his hand hidden, but his smile not hidden enough. I found an insurance form from Caleb's birth with a name scratched out and rewritten. I found a message Emily had deleted from her phone, but not from the tablet Lily used for games. It was from Ryan, sent 2 days after Lily was born. "She has your eyes." 5 words. That was all. 5 words can turn a hallway into a courtroom. I did not sleep that night. I walked room to room while everyone else dreamed inside the life I had been financing, repairing, and defending. In Caleb's room, baseball trophies lined the dresser. In Lily's room, a paper snowflake she made at school hung crooked over her desk. I stood there and felt something inside me bend, but not break. Proof, not rage. That became the rule. Proof, not rage. Grace helped me arrange legal genetic testing through the proper channels. No tricks. No threats. No shouting in a parking lot. I gave samples where I was supposed to give them. I signed what I was supposed to sign. I waited. Waiting was the worst part. Waiting lets your mind become cruel with possibilities. Maybe only one child. Maybe neither. Maybe a clerical mistake. Maybe a nightmare with paperwork. Then the certified results came in on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, in a plain envelope that looked too ordinary to carry the end of a family. I sat in my truck outside the post office for 40 minutes before opening it. The heater ran. Snow gathered on the windshield. People walked past carrying packages and greeting cards. The world kept behaving like the world. When I read the first line, I stopped breathing. When I read the second, I felt my old life step out of me and close the door behind it. Now, standing in my dining room with Emily's parents watching and Ryan turning the color of wet paper, I pulled the documents free. Emily reached across the table, not fast, but desperate enough to tell everyone the truth before the page did. I moved the papers out of her reach. "No," I said quietly. "You had years to control the story. Tonight, the facts get a turn." The papers made a soft sound as I unfolded them, softer than the truth inside them deserved. I did not read immediately. I let the room catch up to what was happening. Emily's parents stared at the pages like they were waiting for them to disappear. Ryan kept his eyes on the table, one thumb rubbing the side of his glass in small circles. He had always been good at looking harmless. That was his talent. Harmless men do not need to raise their voices. They borrow trust from other people's homes and call it friendship. "Nathan," Emily said, and now there was no polish left. Just panic dressed in a whisper. "Think about what you were doing." I looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first honest time in years. The woman across from me had stood beside hospital beds and school stages, church pews and family barbecues, smiling in every photograph like our life was a promise she intended to keep. I wondered when she had started seeing me as furniture. Useful, steady, easy to move around when the room needed changing. "I have thought about it," I said. "For 3 weeks. Margaret made a small sound, like air leaving a tire. Donald's face tightened. 3 weeks, he asked. Emily shot him a look, but it was too late. Questions were already waking up around the table. I placed the first page flat beside the candles. The flame trembled when my hand passed over it. On December 4th, I said, I found the lab portal on Emily's laptop. On December 5th, I called an attorney. On December 8th, I found the old hotel charges. On December 12th, I found the message from Ryan after Lily was born. Ryan finally looked up, not at me, at Emily. That look again. A wire pulled tight. Do not, he said under his breath. 2 words. Small. Useless. Emily's face went pale in patches, the way winter light falls through blinds. This is private, she said. I nodded once. It was private when you lied to me. It stopped being private when you put divorce papers on a Christmas dinner table in front of our children. The word "our" nearly caught in my throat, but I kept it steady. Our children. My children in every way that had cost me sleep, money, time, patience, and love. My children in the only way that mattered to them when they were scared. But biology was sitting on that page, cold and official, and I could not pretend it had no teeth. Caleb and Lily were in the living room, but I knew Caleb was listening. He had gone silent in the way kids go silent when they are trying to become invisible. That hurt more than the paperwork. I lowered my voice, not for Emily, but for him. Grace Hollander is on speaker in my phone, I said. She has copies of everything. The genetic testing was handled legally. The documents are certified. I am going to read what matters, and then this performance ends. Emily's mouth opened. Nothing came. Grace's voice came from my phone, calm and professional, the kind of voice built for rooms where people could not trust their own. Mr. Whitaker, you may proceed. Donald pushed back from the table. Emily, what is this? She looked at her father then, and for one brief second, she was not a wife, not a mother, not a woman with a plan. She was a daughter caught standing beside the thing she had done. Dad, please, she said. Please. People use that word when truth stops asking permission. I picked up the top page. The letterhead was black and blue. The language was clinical. No emotion, no mercy, just names, numbers, and conclusions. I had read it alone in my truck, with snow building on the windshield and Christmas shoppers walking past with bags in their hands. Reading it aloud felt different. Reading it aloud gave the lie a body. My throat tightened, so I paused. Not because I was weak, because I was still human. I looked toward the living room. Lily had crawled onto the couch and pulled a blanket to her chin. Caleb stood behind it, one hand on the back cushion, his eyes fixed on me. I wanted to stop. I wanted to fold the papers, burn the evening down to silence, carry them both upstairs, and tell them none of this could touch them. But lies touch children whether we name them or not. They grow in walls. They breathe under doors. They become the strange coldness kids blame themselves for. I turned back to the table. The first report concerns Caleb Michael Whitaker, I said. Emily covered her mouth. Ryan closed his eyes. Based on the genetic markers tested, Nathan James Whitaker is excluded as the biological father. The room did not gasp. It sank. Slowly, like a house settling after the foundation cracks. I heard Margaret whisper, "Oh, Emily." I read the second line before anyone could stop me. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Caleb made a sound from the living room. Not a cry. Worse, a breath that did not know where to go. I gripped the paper harder and forced myself to continue because halfway truth is just another kind of cruelty. The second report concerns Lily and Whitaker. Emily shook her head, tears sliding now, but I did not look away. Nathan James Whitaker is excluded as the biological father. For words became a winter storm. Excluded as the biological father. The candles kept burning. The tree kept blinking. Dinner kept cooling. The world, rude as ever, kept going. I set the page down. Probability of paternity, I said, and my voice almost broke on the last number, 0.00%. The number landed in the room and stayed there. 0.00%. It did not echo like shouting would have. It settled. It pressed into the tablecloth, into the candle wax, into the polished silverware Emily had insisted we use because her parents were coming. Margaret began to cry quietly, the kind of crying that tries not to take up space. Donald stood with one hand on the back of his chair, staring at his daughter as if he had lost the language to ask what she had done. Ryan had gone still, completely still. Men like him always believe they can talk their way through weather, but this was not weather. This was a report with a letterhead. This was science in black ink. Emily lowered herself into the chair across from me, one hand still covering her mouth, eyes wet and wide and full of something that looked close to regret but arrived too late to matter. Nathan, she said, and my name sounded strange in her voice, like she was trying to remember how it used to work. Please, let me explain. I looked toward the living room. Caleb was standing so straight it broke my heart. Lily had disappeared beneath the blanket except for her eyes. I wanted to go to them. Every part of me wanted to leave the adults at the table with their lies and kneel beside the couch and tell those two kids that I was still the man who checked under beds for monsters, still the man who packed lunches, Still the man who knew which cereal Lily liked when she was sick and which ball cap Caleb wore for luck. But if I moved too soon, Emily would fill the silence. She had always known how to fill silence. Explain what? I asked. My voice was low, not gentle, not cruel, just low. Which part? The first child? The second? The years between? Emily shook her head, tears falling onto her sweater. It was complicated. That word almost did what her betrayal could not. It almost made me angry. Complicated is when a furnace breaks on Christmas Eve and every repair company is booked. Complicated is a mortgage payment and a medical bill landing in the same week. Complicated is trying to teach a 12-year-old that honesty matters while his mother is sitting 10 feet away, proving that some adults treat honesty like a decoration they put out for guests. This was not complicated. This was chosen. Ryan cleared his throat. Nathan, I think we should all calm down. I turned my eyes to him. Slowly. He stopped. Good. You do not get to moderate this, I said. Not in my house. He flinched at the word my. Emily looked at him again, quick and terrified, and that look finally pushed Donald over the edge. Ryan, he said, his voice rough, are they yours? The question cut through the room with no drama at all. Simple questions are often the most dangerous. Ryan opened his mouth, closed it, then looked down at his hands. That was answer enough, but the room waited anyway because people still hope a lie can produce mercy at the last second. None came. Emily whispered, Dad, stop. Donald's face folded inward. Are they his? Margaret asked, barely audible. Emily did not speak. She did not have to. Her silence sat down beside the DNA reports and signed its name. I placed the papers back into the envelope with hands that were steadier than they had been in 3 weeks. Grace, I said toward the phone, please confirm for everyone at this table that copies have been filed with your office. Grace Hollander's voice came through clear. Copies of the certified reports, related financial documents, and preliminary custody considerations are secured. Mr. Whitaker has been advised not to discuss settlement terms without counsel present. Emily looked up fast. Custody. There it was. The first time fear had moved from her reputation to her control. I nodded. You put divorce papers in front of me tonight. I signed them. Now we do this correctly. You cannot take them from me, she said. I am not trying to take children from their mother, I said. I am trying to keep lies from making decisions for them. From the couch, Caleb's voice came quiet and cracked. Dad, every adult turned. He stood at the edge of the living room. No cocoa mug now, no blanket, just a boy with too much truth on his shoulders. Are you still my dad? That was the moment. Not the DNA. Not Emily. Not Ryan. That question, for words found the softest place in me and put pressure there. I walked away from the table and knelt in front of him. My knees touched the rug where he and Lily had opened presents every year since they were small. I held his gaze because children deserve eye contact when the world is changing. Yes, I said. Nothing on that paper changes what I have been to you. Lily climbed off the couch and came to my side, crying now but softly, like she was afraid noise would make everything worse. I opened one arm and she stepped into it. Caleb tried to stay, strong for half a second, then folded against my shoulder. Behind me, Emily made a broken sound, but I did not turn around. For once, her pain was not the center of the room. The children were. The only innocent people in that house were breathing against my chest, and I understood with a clarity no court document could give me that fatherhood was not erased by ink. But marriage could be. Trust could be. The version of me who protected Emily from consequences could be. I looked over Caleb's shoulder at the dining table, at the divorce papers, the DNA reports, the untouched Christmas dinner, and the woman who had mistaken my love for weakness. Then I said, quietly enough for the children not to carry the weight of it, but firmly enough for every adult to understand. The lie ends tonight. Emily stood behind me while Caleb and Lily held on like the floor might open beneath them. I could feel her there before she spoke. Some people enter a room with warmth. Emily entered with calculation, even when she was crying. Caleb, she said softly, sweetheart, come here. He did not move. His fingers tightened in the back of my sweater. That tiny pressure told me more than any court filing ever could. Lily buried her face against my side, and I rested my hand on her hair, careful, steady, the way I had when thunderstorms rolled over the neighborhood and she thought the sky was angry. Mom, Caleb said, and the word sounded smaller than it should have. Is it true? Emily inhaled like she had been asked a question in front of a jury. She looked at her parents, then at Ryan, then at me, searching for the safest version of the truth. That had always been her gift. Not honesty. Editing. It is more complicated than that, she said. Caleb pulled back just enough to look at her. That is not an answer. 12 years old. Still in Christmas pajamas. Still with a little chocolate at the corner of his mouth. And somehow more honest than every adult at the table. Emily's face crumpled, but I could not tell if it was sorrow or the shock of losing control. I was lonely, she said. Your father was always working. He was always gone. I made mistakes. Mistakes. There it was again. That soft little word people use when they want a choice to sound like a spill on the carpet. I stood slowly, keeping one hand on Caleb's shoulder and the other near Lily, so they knew I was not stepping away from them. Do not put this on them, I said. And do not dress it up for me. Emily wiped her cheeks with both hands. You do not know what it was like. I almost answered too quickly. Then I stopped. The old Nathan would have defended himself. Listed the hours. The mortgage. The snow mornings when I left before sunrise and came home after dark. The weekends repairing the deck. The school runs. The pediatric bills. The college savings accounts. The Christmases I built with tired hands because I believed effort was a language love understood. But I had learned something in those 3 weeks of silence. People who rewrite history do not need more facts. They need an audience removed. I know what the bank statements say, I replied. I know what the calendars say. I know what the messages say. Ryan pushed his chair back. That is enough. Donald turned on him then, slow and furious without raising his voice. No, son. I think enough happened years ago. Ryan froze at the word son, maybe because it sounded too much like what he had been without earning the cost of it. Margaret looked at Emily with tears streaking down her face. Both children? She asked. Emily, both? Emily closed her eyes. That was answer number 2. The dining room seemed to tilt around the silence. I looked at the wall where our family photos hung in a neat line leading toward the stairs. Caleb on my shoulders at the county fair. Lily holding a sparkler on the 4th of July. Emily and me in front of a pumpkin patch, smiling like the picture knew less than we did. I wondered how many lies could fit inside one frame. Then Emily said something that turned the room sharp again. Nathan, you love them. You will not abandon them. You are too good for that. There it was. The final manipulation. Not a plea. A bet. She was betting on my decency because she had been spending it like a joint account for years. I looked at her, and the grief inside me went still. Not gone. Still. You are right, I said. I will not abandon them. Her shoulders dropped with relief. Too soon. But you do not get to use my love for them as a hiding place anymore. Grace's voice came from the phone. Mr. Whitaker, I recommend ending the conversation until counsel is present. I nodded, but there was one thing left to say. I turned to Caleb and Lily first. You did nothing wrong, I told them. Nothing. Adults made choices. Those choices belong to adults. Caleb's eyes filled, but he nodded. Lily whispered, Are we still having Christmas? The question nearly broke me. Behind her, the tree blinked red, gold, foolish and faithful. I swallowed the ache and said, Not like we planned. But yes, we are still having Christmas. Then I faced Emily. You and Ryan need to leave this room. Not the house yet. The room. My children are going to eat something warm, open one gift each, and breathe for 10 minutes without adults turning their lives into a battlefield. Emily flinched at my children. I did not correct it. Not then. Donald placed a hand on Margaret's shoulder and guided her away from the table. Ryan stood, pale and silent, no longer the confident guest with the expensive wine. Emily lingered, looking at the kids as if she expected them to run to her. They did not. That was not punishment. That was consequence. When the adults finally stepped into the hallway, I took the plates from the dining room and carried them to the kitchen. My hands moved by habit because habit saves you when the heart cannot. I warmed turkey, scooped mashed potatoes, poured milk into 2 glasses, and set the food on the coffee table. Caleb and Lily sat close together beneath the blanket. I sat on the floor in front of them, the way I had every Christmas morning since they were small. Nobody said much. The house had too many echoes. But after a while, Lily took one bite. Then Caleb did too. Small things. Breathing things. The first proof that life could continue after a truth like that. From the hallway, Emily cried quietly. I heard her. I did not move toward the sound. For 12 years, I had mistaken rescue for love. That night, with my children eating Christmas dinner, on the couch and the DNA reports resting beside the signed divorce papers, I finally understood the difference. After the children ate, I let them open one gift each because sometimes a promise needs to survive even when the people who made it do not. Caleb chose the flat box under the tree with his name written in Lily's crooked handwriting, a new sketchbook and charcoal pencils. He had been drawing buildings lately, tall ones with clean lines and impossible windows, and I always told him he saw structure better than most adults. He tried to smile when he opened it. The smile did not make it all the way, but it tried. That mattered. Lily opened the small red box from me, the one with a silver snowflake necklace inside. She held it in her palm like it might melt. "You remembered," she whispered. I nodded because speaking right then would have cost too much. I had remembered because fathers remember. They remember shoe sizes and dentist appointments and which stuffed animal has to travel on overnight trips. They remember the songs a child asks for when fever makes the ceiling scary. They remember not because blood tells them to, but because love writes things down in places no one else can see. From the hallway, voices moved low and strained. Emily, Ryan, her parents, all trapped outside the circle they had broken. I did not let them back in until Caleb and Lily were upstairs in their rooms, not asleep, but quiet, each with a phone and a promise from me that I would be right down the hall. When I returned to the dining room, the candles had burned low. Wax pooled around the bases like the evening had melted from the inside out. The divorce papers sat beside the DNA envelope. The turkey had gone cold. Ryan stood near the window with his coat over one arm. Emily sat at the table, both hands clasped in front of her, eyes red, face bare of every performance she had worn at 7 o'clock. Margaret and Donald were on the far side of the room, older now than they had been 2 hours earlier. Truth ages people. It removes the lighting. "I want to talk alone," Emily said. "No," I answered. One word. Clean. Grace Hollander was still on the phone, muted but present. I had already sent her photos of the signed divorce papers, the table, the envelope, the room exactly as it was. Not because I wanted drama, because I had spent too many years trusting atmosphere over documentation. Never again. Emily looked down at her hands. "I did not know how to tell you. So you let me build a life on it." She flinched. I was scared. Of losing comfort, I said. Not of hurting me. Ryan turned from the window. "That is not fair." I almost laughed again. Fair. The man had stood inside my house on Christmas night, watched my children unwrap gifts I bought, drank from my glasses, accepted my hospitality, and now wanted to introduce fairness like a late guest. "You should go," I said. He looked at Emily, waiting for her to save him from the room. She did not. Donald opened the front door himself. Cold air spilled across the hardwood, clean and sharp. Ryan stepped out without another word. No apology. No explanation. Just the soft crunch of expensive boots on snow and the quiet click of a car door outside. When the door closed, the house felt less crowded but not lighter. Some absences still weigh something. Emily stood then, desperate rising in her eyes. "Nathan, please. You are still the only father they have ever known. You said it yourself. You will not leave them." I looked at her for a long moment. The old reflex stirred in me, the one that wanted to soften every edge, cover every consequence, keep the room warm even if I had to burn myself for heat. Then I thought about the report, the message, the search history, the way she had placed divorce papers beside my plate like a holiday favor. "I am not leaving them," I said. "I am leaving you." Her face folded. Margaret turned away. Donald closed his eyes. I reached into the folder Grace had prepared and removed the third document, the one Emily did not know I had found because it was mine, not hers. A medical report from 13 years earlier, after the scaffolding accident in Cincinnati. I had kept it in a lockbox because some grief is too private to throw away. The specialist had used careful language. Severe reproductive impairment. Natural conception highly unlikely. I remembered sitting in my truck afterward, staring at traffic on Interstate 71, wondering how to tell my wife that the family we wanted might have to come another way. 2 months later, Emily told me she was pregnant with Caleb. I chose miracle over math. Love does that. Love wants to believe the sky can open if you pray hard enough. I slid the old report across the table. Emily stared at it, then covered her mouth. "You knew?" she whispered. "No," I said. "I hoped." The difference filled the room. Heavy. Final. And somewhere deep down, I continued, you knew I would. Emily looked at the medical report as if the paper had reached across the table and taken the last safe lie from her hands. For a while, no one spoke. The furnace clicked on. Snow brushed the front windows. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked, and I knew one of the children was awake, listening to a house learn how to breathe differently. Emily touched the edge of the report with one finger. I thought you would hate me, she whispered. I shook my head. Not because the words did not hurt, but because they were too small for what she had done. You did not give me the chance to feel anything honestly. Her eyes lifted to mine. I was young. I was scared. Then it got harder every year to tell the truth. No, I said. It got more useful every year not to. Margaret covered her face. Donald walked to the window and stared out at Ryan's tire tracks fading under new snow. That was the mercy of weather. It covered evidence. People did the same when no one stopped them. Emily leaned forward, desperate now. We can still handle this privately. We can tell the kids when they are older. We can say the divorce is mutual. Please, Nathan, please do not destroy everything. I looked at the table between us. The signed papers, the DNA reports, the medical file, the Christmas napkins folded into little red triangles because Lily had helped me with them that afternoon. Destroy everything. She still thought the damage began when I opened the envelope. That was the blindness of people who live too long inside their own story. Everything was destroyed in pieces, I said. I just stopped sweeping them under the rug. Grace's voice came through the phone, gentle but firm. Mr. Whitaker, I recommend securing the documents and ending the in-person conversation. I gathered the papers and placed them back into the folder. My hands were steady now, not because I was healed. Healing was miles away. But there is a strange calm that comes when the worst thing has finally been named. Emily stood when I did. Where are you going? Upstairs, I said, to check on the children. And then, I put on my coat from the back of the chair. Then I am taking the guest room tonight. Tomorrow, Grace files the emergency motions. The joint accounts stay frozen until the court reviews them. No more private arrangements. No more quiet favors. No more stories that protect you at their expense. Emily began to cry harder, but the sound no longer pulled me across the room. That was new. That was freedom starting as distance. Donald turned from the window, his voice broken. Nathan, I am sorry. I nodded once. I believed him. It did not change anything, but I believed him. Upstairs, Caleb's door was cracked open. He sat on the edge of his bed with the sketchbook in his lap, unopened. Lily was beside him, still wearing the snowflake necklace over her pajamas. I sat between them without turning on the big light. The hallway glow was enough. Are we going to be okay? Caleb asked. I took a breath. A real one. The first real one all night. Not right away, I said. But yes, we are going to tell the truth, and we are going to take care of each other. Lily leaned against my arm. Do I have to call someone else, Dad? The question split me clean down the center. I kissed the top of her head and kept my voice steady because children borrow strength from the nearest adult, and I refused to hand her more fear. No, I said. You call people what your heart knows them to be. Caleb looked at me for a long time. Then he opened the sketchbook and turned to the first blank page. Can I stay with you tomorrow? He asked. I nodded. Yes. One word. Enough for that moment. Later, after they finally slept, I went downstairs. Emily was gone from the dining room. Her parents had left too. The tree kept blinking over. The wreckage of Christmas dinner, loyal to its little pattern. Red, gold, red, gold. I stood there in the quiet and looked at the empty chairs, the cold plates, the place where my signature had ended one life and started another. I did not feel victorious. That is not how truth feels when children are involved. It does not lift you up like a parade. It steadies you like a hand on your back when you are walking out of a burning season with nothing but your name and the people who still need you. I turned off the dining room lights, one switch at a time. The window reflected a man I barely recognized. Older than he had been that morning, but clearer. Outside, the snow kept falling over Columbus, soft and patient, covering the lawns, the roofs, the tire tracks, everything except what mattered. Some lies can survive years in a warm house, but not the moment someone finally opens the envelope.